That's enough, Kishi. Let's get this over with.
What the muff? Kubo?
Troll. Plot Kai.
Kubo trolled by fandom?
You have all asked that I do Bleach. I'm feeling a little low on Naruto videos for the time being, but maybe it's time for me to break out into other manga. The next manga to do was pretty obviously Bleach. Like Naruto, the consensus about Bleach is that it started out good, but gradually got worse as time went on. As many times as Naruto jumped the shark, Bleach did it twice as much. Or is it 4 times as much? I don't really know. I'm not alone in doing this. I remember when Bleach ended back in 2016, countless videos came out about how Bleach had fallen from grace. People's opinions on Bleach turned for the worse.
Bleach has managed to jump the shark again.
How do you jump the shark from jumping the shark?
You turn around and jump it again.
Apparently we're being told that there's a book called Unmasked that we need to read.
I don't care! Okay? I don't care! I don't care about external material, alright? Kubo's a bad writer.
Look at this, so much Bleach didn't make the cut videos. To start off with some history, remember how in the 2000s, Shonen Jump had what many considered to be the big 3. One Piece, Naruto, and Bleach. You could argue that any of the 3 was the best, the most successful. While One Piece and Naruto succeeded Bleach in popularity in Japan, in America it was a different story. Bleach was widely considered to have the best English dub by a long shot. Bleach's dub would air on Adult Swim long before Toonami became part of Adult Swim, which I think really helped its fan base grow. I don't have the experience with Bleach that I have with Naruto. I did start reading the series around the time the final arc was getting started, but while I was really enraptured with the first story arcs, I gradually lost interest. And by the time the final arc started, I just didn't care anymore. To add insult to injury, shortly after Bleach's final arc started in 2012, the long-running anime was cancelled due to declining ratings, and the fact that, well, years and years of filler will do that. Makes me wonder how the Naruto anime never got cancelled. Now I know next year they are animating the final arc of Bleach, but I can't find information on who's animating it. Apparently it's not Studio Pierrot, I heard. Damn, whose dick do I have to suck to get Studio Pierrot to lose Naruto? Don't answer that. Not only that, but Bleach's later manga chapters regularly ranked in the bottom 5 of Shonen Jump, which is usually a sign for cancellation. I suspect it's why the ending of the manga was so rushed. They probably told Kubo that he had a month to wrap things up. Speaking of, let's talk about Kubo real quick. Tight Kubo. Every time I see this picture of him with those sunglasses, I can't help but think he's trying way too hard to be cool. The dude's beginnings as a manga artist are relatively humble. He started with a one-shot, then a serialization story called Zombie Powder, which only ran for 27 chapters before being cancelled. But Kubo received a letter from Akira Toriyama of Dragon Ball fame telling him to keep going, and so that leads us to Bleach. Speaking of which, it'd be nice to have interviews from Kubo as I go through this series. Feel free to link them in the comments if you can. So before we go into why Bleach jumped the shark, and believe me, there are many reasons as to why, we must first see why it drew praise to begin with. So with that, we'll start at the beginning. We meet our protagonist, Ichigo Kurosaki, a high school student who lives with his father and sisters, but he has the gift to see spirits. This leads to him meeting the Shinigami, or Soul Reapers as Viz calls it. Rukia comes from the Soul Society where other Shinigami reside. Rukia's job is basically to guide the lost souls to the afterlife. During a battle with a Hollow, Rukia is left weak and with no choice transfers her powers to Ichigo, who wants to protect his family. From then on, the first year of Bleach is spent largely introducing us to the main cast of characters. Chad, the gentle giant, Orihime, the plucky girl who has a crush on Ichigo, and Ishida, who is a Quincy and thus has a grudge against the Shinigami. The early days of Bleach were mainly a monster of the week type of scenario, with Ichigo learning the ropes as a Shinigami. But what really makes this stand out is Ichigo and Rukia's interactions. Kubo does a good job of developing their bond. Now, before we get into shipping talk, I'll just say I never necessarily saw any relationship in Bleach as romantic. I appreciate Kubo took the time to set up the characters in the world they lived in before getting to the heavy stuff, such as the plot about Ichigo's mother. Please don't tell me she turns out to be a red herring too. I can't take that again. Each character in the series had their quirks, except for Ichigo. You see, Ichigo is often accused of not being a very interesting protagonist, which we'll cover later. The general idea of the shonen protagonist is that while they don't change, they are the force of change for others. Ichigo serves as a hero that you can admire. You want to see him win. He doesn't do this because he wants any reward, but because he has a good heart and he wants to protect people. Yeah, not a flawed hero, but with shonen, it's generally more important that your main protagonist be admirable than well-rounded. It all comes to a head when Rukia's older brother Byakuya and Renji appear to take Rukia back to Soul Society for a travel. Looking back, it's obvious Kubo intended for the real meat of the story to come later. Apparently, I've heard Kubo had plans for more of Ichigo's classmates to get powers, but was told to hurry up and get to the real meat, which was the Soul Society. I don't know if that's true. Ichigo comes to Rukia's rescue, and though he's able to surprisingly beat Renji, better get used to that, Renji, Byakuya absolutely owns Ichigo and shows a level of power that Ichigo has not yet achieved.
Here's where Kubo really succeeded with the first year of Bleach.
You really buy into Ichigo and Rukia's bond. You buy that she doesn't want him to die, and it feels completely genuine that Ichigo wants to save her. From then on, Ichigo and his friends train to be able to enter the Soul Society and save Rukia. Once Ichigo and friends enter the Soul Society, they find more things than they could possibly imagine waiting for them. The Soul Society was a long arc, but it didn't feel long at all. All the characters get a moment to shine, except for maybe Orihime. Yeah, I know a lot of people don't like her, but she's not too bad in this arc. She's not entirely Ichigo crazy. Basically, the first year of Bleach felt like build-up, and this was the culmination of it. The characters all go through tribulation, alliances are forged, and some characters we meet seemingly die. Of course, Bleach is no stranger to the rival trope of shonen. Ichigo has two in this arc, Renji and Byakuya. How should I sum up Renji? Well, every time he gets into a fight, let's just use this as an example.
This time I'm gonna kick that football clear to the moon!
But the best part of the arc is just the internal struggle the characters go through. Rukia doesn't even get to physically do anything, but she gets the best development in the entire arc. The damsel in distress trope can be effective, and it's done well here. Rukia doesn't think that her life has any value, owing to the failure to protect one of her fallen lieutenants, an obvious parallel to Ichigo. But slowly she comes to realize that her life has value. Byakuya is a man who is strictly focused on honor. Even though he appears cold at executing his adoptive sister, he really is hurting deep down, but it's his job. Ichigo, of course, has his own superpowered evil side, as it were, his hollow form. Ichigo gains immense power, but loses control of himself in the process. Every shonen has to have this, don't they? The whole arc climaxes when Ichigo fights Byakuya for Rukia's life. The battle between the two is intense. At one point it seems Ichigo's life is saved by the emergence of his hollow. But Ichigo fights it off because he wants to win the fight himself. It's not every day you see a shonen hero fight off his power-up because he wants to win the battle on his own terms. Thus, after a long clash, Ichigo stands victorious. Of course, you can't talk about this arc without mentioning the game-changing twist that was Aizen. Aizen, one of the Soul Reaver captains, was in fact the true bad guy of the arc, carefully manipulating everyone so he can get the Hokyo out of Rukia. Basically, this was a reminder that as epic as the Soul Society was, bigger things were still to come. Byakuya absolutely curb-stomping Ichigo, it showed that there were bigger enemies out there, more powerful foes to face. And Aizen did the same thing while being more ambitious, calculating, and secretive. So it seemed he would become one of the best shonen villains, but instead he would become one of the most wasted ones. But we'll get to that. At the end, Rukia decides to stay in Soul Society. Ichigo's fine with this, as his close friend is safe and that's all that matters to him. The final moments between Ichigo and Rukia are heartfelt and somber. For the moment, we don't care about Aizen's plans to come. For now, our characters are safe, everyone is happy, Our characters have grown closer, and the panel of Ichigo successfully blocking his father's kick as a reminder of how strong our heroes become, it just shows that the journey has been worth it. And as I said at the beginning of my Naruto review, it will never be again. But I think you already know that. I can see why Bleach was well received. The characters were fun and memorable. I gotta say, whatever arcs One Piece and Naruto were on during this time, along with the Soul Society arc, what an amazing time that must have been for manga fans. The Soul Society arc took Bleach from being, pretty good to, OMG, this is so epic! So everyone took this as a sign that Bleach was going to get better and better. But the reality is, the Soul Society arc was just the peak of the series. Everything after this will unravel and reveal that maybe Kubo wasn't quite cut out for it. But that's a story for next time. We're going to get deeper into this as we go. This video was just meant to be an introduction, to remind people of the good in Bleach, why people fell in love with it. The reason why people look back fondly on this portion of Bleach was because Kubo made you care about his characters, and we wanted to see what happened to them, but sadly it was not to be. Next video we will be...
So, where we last left off, Ichigo and his friends had successfully rescued Rukia, and have returned home and life goes on. But of course, it's not that simple. Bleach was riding a big high at this point. This next portion makes up the Arrancar arc, which lasts for over 200 chapters. I have heard that apparently Kubo didn't plan for the arc to last this long, but the Arrancars proved unexpectedly popular, and thus Kubo had to drag it out. Editors really are a tricky thing in shonen, so let's not waste any time. During the late 2000s, early 2010s, Bleach's volume sales dropped 1 million each year from 2009 to 2011, which a lot of people took to mean that something happened in Bleach around then that turned people off of it. But let's cover the beginning of the Arrancar arc. So we seem to be settling back into a normal standard for Bleach. I suppose I'll use this opportunity to talk about Ichigo's classmates outside of the main cast. Kigo is comic relief for the most part, but I find it relatively harmless, and his older sister Mizuho is... there. Tadzuki, Orihime's friend, is the sparring partner of Ichigo's. There's a scene that shows that she can see spirits, but I don't know if it ever goes anywhere. There's Chizuru, who likes to sexually harass Orihime. I swear, if she was a boy, this would not fly. In fact, it's still kind of uncomfortable. But Japan has different views on this stuff than America does. Ichigo and his friends are attacked by the mysterious Espada, and some interesting plot reveals happen, such as the reveal that Ichigo's father is a Soul Reaper. Well played, Kubo. The 10th Espada absolutely shatters Ichigo, so he starts training under some rogue Soul Reapers. What follows is Ichigo fighting his Hollow. Basically, his Hollow lectures him about instinct. Basically, fight with passion, which doesn't really seem nearly all that wise. So basically what happens in this section, the Espadas attack, Rukia and a bunch of captains come back to help Ichigo in the event that the Espada attack again, which they do twice. Ulquiorra, the lead rival for Ichigo in this arc, tells Orihime that she must give herself up. She does, and Ichigo and his friends go off to Hokomundo to save her. So far nothing seems too bad, but we're entering the Hokomundo arc. Before we get into the plot beats, I'll comment on Hokomundo. Yeah, there's nothing there. I think that's the intention, but it also really just highlights how Kubo just doesn't do backgrounds. In many ways, I find his character artwork to be superior to both Oda and Kishimoto's, but the lack of backgrounds really hurt the series. Not to mention, from what I understand, isn't it usually the assistants who do backgrounds? Does Kubo have assistants? So originally Yamamoto refuses to let any of the captains accompany Ichigo to rescue Orihime, but then Yamamoto later changes his mind and sends Rukia and Renji to help. Yeah, I've noticed that high-ranking people in shonens tend to be terrible at their job. So this devolves into more fights with the Espadas, and I think everyone who has reviewed Bleach has pointed out here that, yeah, Bleach starts to get repetitive. I'll just let them sum it up.
In which Ichigo and his friends must enter a world they don't understand, face down an ancient and patriarchal society in a desperate battle to rescue their friend. Sound familiar?
The catalyst for the beginning of the story is the abduction of a main female character. The main characters are separated as soon as they infiltrate the enemy's stronghold. A short ways into the adventure, a cutesy comic relief character with healing abilities joins up with Ichigo. Ishida fights a mad scientist. One of Ichigo's rivals has a bizarre hair color and markings around the eyes and is the most sympathetic villain in the arc, while the other is pale-skinned, dark-haired, eternally condescending, and comes into conflict with the first rival. Rukia is haunted by memories of her fallen lieutenant. Chad utterly destroys a minor villain whose name nobody remembers and then immediately loses to a more powerful foe. Renji loses to everyone.
Yeah, now granted, I think the reason for this is because each shonen likes to follow a formula. It's just with Bleach that's the most notable. I find a lot of the fights with the Espadas to be good. Forgive me if I'm pronouncing any of these wrong. Harukia's fight with Aranoro is probably my favorite of the bunch. It was great to see her put her demons to rest. A couple of the other fights were good or just serviceable. A lot of people take issue with the fact that the captains had to come and bail out the main cast, and that does become a huge problem later on. At first I took it as a sign that our heroes weren't on the same level as these captains yet. And that's fine, there's still plenty of room to grow. But unfortunately, at the end of this arc, that wouldn't seem to be the case. Let's talk about Chad. As mentioned in each arc, his story has been, he defeats a minor villain whose name nobody remembers, and then immediately loses to a more powerful foe. Then he comes back and doesn't really do much. So that leads me to ask, why is he billed as a main character? I guess it's like Worf from Star Trek The Next Generation. Every time he got owned, it was meant to show that the villain of the week was really tough, but since he hasn't really had any true victories, he's lost all credibility at this point. This part of the arc took a while to really get going. Here's something that seriously bugs me with Kubo, his over-reliance on double-page spreads. Now, the use of a double-page spread is typically to show that something big has happened. Except it loses its punch when you do it all the time. Nothing feels big because nothing feels small. And it seriously just slows down the pacing of this arc to a crawl. Another thing that's been pointed out to me is that Kubo really likes to step up the arm maiming, which is pretty much the go-to limb disjointment in shonen. I guess it's just easy, and it's not too violent, and they can get away with it in these silly comics that are meant for children. Now let's cover Ichigo's fight with Grimjaw. Unfortunately, I don't find Grimjaw to be a particularly memorable rival. There's an attempt to flesh him out, but he gets killed off before it can really go anywhere. I did like moments of the fight that were really badass. This part of the arc concludes when Aizen heads to Karakura Town and blocks the heroes from following him. Basically, he plans to annihilate the town as part of a ritual to meet and kill God. Yeah, that's about what I'd expect the main villain of Bleach to have as their motivation. But he finds the rest of the Soul Society captains there waiting for him. Alright, good, I thought. We had to sit through all that padding, and now finally we get to the good stuff, and instead we get a flashback. Now, to be perfectly honest with you, this turn back the pendulum flashback is actually pretty damn awesome. It's very interesting, intriguing, and it's rather interesting to look into things before the series proper began. It's just such a cruel tease. We were just about to get to the good stuff, and then boom, flashback. Although, I'd say of all the shonen flashbacks I've read, Turn Back the Pendulum might be my favorite. Alright, so we're back. Yamamoto and the captains are facing down Aizen and his subordinates, and Ichigo is finally confronting Ulquiorra to rescue Orihime. So finally, at long last, the arc is climaxing. About time, because this arc is seriously starting to drag. Let's get this moving, and then some unimportant characters fight instead. Yeah, the lower lieutenants are fighting. We know these fights don't really matter because all the ones who do are just floating there. I seriously suspect Kubo was like, alright, I got the big fights in place, but I need more time to plan them out, so I'll just have some other fights happen until I'm ready for the bigger fights. Yeah, there's a couple things going on here, like Ikkaku's character arc progresses a little bit. So finally, the captains join the fight, and they still don't do anything. Instead, some minor things happen, then the Espada decide to finally fight seriously. Then, we cut to Ichigo instead. Now, admittedly, finally, we're getting something important. But yeah, Kubo keeps hyping out that the captains are going to fight Aizen soon, and yet we still don't get that. It's just so agonizing. As much shit as I gave Kishimoto for the long wait for Naruto versus Sasuke, at least he didn't do like so many false starts. So the fight between Ichigo and Ulquiorra is... it's fine. I mean, you got Ishida and Orihime watching the fight. Ichigo's doing pretty badly, but he's Ichigo, so he thinks he can still win. So Ulquiorra decides to turn into... whatever the hell this is. Still looks better than Sasuke's gargoyle form, I'd say. So yeah, the fight is going badly. Ulquiorra blows a hole straight through Ichigo's chest. Yeah, this is bad. But with how absurd Bleach healing tends to be, I mean, it's like a whole nother level. You can regenerate lost limbs in this series from what I can see. So finally, Orihime is going to step up. She's had this character arc about getting stronger, now it's time for it all to pay off. Ishida's dying, Ichigo's dying, Orihime's powers have been evolving. This is the moment, the payoff, the part where you look at the character and go, yeah, this was all worth it. She's gonna do something, and it's gonna be good, and now our heroine Orihime will... start crying for Ichigo to save her. Okay, I'm seriously getting Sakura flashbacks here to when she cried to Sasuke to stop despite not knowing a thing about him. I know this happened first, but I can't help but be reminded. Kubo, you've had Orihime bring someone back from the dead. Why can't you just do that here? Why is she calling out for Ichigo to save her while he's lying on the ground dying from a massive hole in his chest? He's the one who needs saving! Does every shonen have this moment where they take a female character, have them go through character development, and then at the critical juncture they take a massive dump all over it? This is the last thing Orihime really gets to do in this arc, and she just doesn't look good. What was the point of making her such a big focus? Her abilities turn out to not be significant to the plot. Aizen even says he has no more use for her. She has no role in the final battle, and as a damsel in distress, she's not as effective as Rukia. Rukia changed Ichigo's life, and he felt that he owed her a tremendous debt, so he bought into their bond. Orihime is close to Ichigo as a friend, a comrade, and yes, I know they end up married in the epilogue, but I'll get to that. But you can't just use Orihime in that role without building her up to be that important. So yeah, Orihime joins the long list of promising female characters undone by sexism from their writers. Or as Y Ruler of Time put it, and I will quote, "Push up your rack and cry for your man as feminism marches right the fuck on." By the way, I got his permission to use that quote for my Naruto critique. So don't go saying I stole it, I got permission. So Ichigo magically comes back to life and pretty much owns Ulquiorra. Then Ichigo regains control of himself, sees Ulquiorra, and demands his arm and leg be cut off so it's a fair fight. Ugh. Now, I know people criticize Ichigo saying that he has no character arc. I'd say that he does. It's that he feels weak in his desire to want to protect his friends, coming into conflict with the fear of his own strength. Every time Ichigo activates his hollow form, he basically loses control of himself, and he doesn't like winning off a power that isn't truly his. That's why his victory over Ulquiorra frustrates him. It wasn't a victory he truly earned. But unfortunately, I find this deconstruction of Ichigo's character to not be particularly well written. The idea was there, the execution just wasn't all that. With that, Ulquiorra dies. It's meant to be in a last poor villain moment, and his last thoughts are of... I really hope you weren't paid for this page, Kubo. Meanwhile, Rukia, Renji, and Chad are fighting this big monster whose name I don't remember. Does it even get resolved? Let's talk about Rukia for a minute here. Rukia was definitely the female lead of Bleach, but once her backstory issues were all resolved, it was like Kubo didn't know what to do with her except to show her occasionally worrying about Ichigo. It's like Sakura all over again. Does every shonen have this problem? How's Nami doing in One Piece? I haven't read in a while. Then there's this guy, Hitsuga. For he regularly ranks as the most popular Bleach character in Japan. I have no idea why, because he is not interesting in the slightest. Apparently he just looks cool to them, so yeah, Japan likes their pretty boys. So now the remaining 3 Espada, who are all said to be stronger than Ulquiorra, see, they don't go from 1 to 10, they go from 0 to 9. Yeah, okay. Anyway, they get defeated very anticlimactically. Aizen just outright guts one of them for no real reason. I mean, these guys are said to be stronger than Ulquiorra, and Ichigo had to do... this massive explosion to put him down. Here, these guys are just defeated with Deus Ex Machinas. Or as Bleach fans like to call it, Plot Kai. Yeah, Naruto fans call it Plot no Jutsu. Everyone has to have a name now to be cute. But now it's time for the main event. Ichigo joins the battlefield and they all form a united front against Aizen. At long last, it's time for our main villain to cut loose. No more waiting, no more padding. Let's do this, and Aizen just kind of beats everybody without breaking a sweat. I'm getting Madara flashbacks here. Aizen's whole bankai is that he can make illusions, which means he can do whatever the hell Kubo needs him to do. Maybe this is why Death Battle hasn't done Madara versus Aizen. It'd be an unstoppable force versus an immovable object. Whose broken bullshit would break the others? Actually, I want to see Saitama from One Punch Man fight both of them. So basically this whole stretch is nothing but Aizen completely owning everyone. Like there's this one part where he tricks everyone into stabbing Himamura instead of him. He completely withstands Yamamoto going all out. You ever realize just how inept the Soul Society captains really are at their jobs? So anyway, the Hokyo evolves and Aizen turns into... This must have taken you like, what, 5 seconds to draw, Kubo? Then he evolves again and he decides to go to real Karakura Town. But Ichigo's father and some other allies show up and Aizen owns them too. Also, Aizen reveals that he has planned Ichigo's entire life. Okay, that came out of left field. I asked some people in my Discord if this ever came up again, and apparently it does. A bit. Just a bit. So yeah, this is so out of nowhere. Here's the thing. Aizen and Ichigo really don't have much of an enemy, despite Ichigo being the main character and Aizen being the main villain. So I guess this was done so that there would be some history, but this barely, if ever, gets brought up again. It's about on par with Karin being the Uzumaki for out-of-nowhere plot twists that end up meaning absolutely nothing to the overall plot. Not to mention the next arc would fly in the face that Aizen was the cause of Chad's power, and apparently he's the reason Orihime has her powers too. So yeah, well, at least it's not an alien being the source of all life. So Aizen heads to Real Karakura Town, and the following chapters are all titled Deicide, which really just highlights how long it takes for this fight to finish. But as Ichigo chases after Aizen and Jin with his father, Isshin tells Ichigo in this dimension time moves differently, and thus he can teach him an amazing forbidden technique. How very convenient. So it follows as Aizen just kind of stalking Ichigo's classmates, like maybe instead he could be chasing after Ichigo's sisters, thus giving Ichigo an even more personal reason to stop Aizen. Here's my issue with this segment. Aizen spends more time stalking Ichigo's classmates than he actually does fighting Ichigo. Jin tries to betray Aizen, but he ends up dying, and I gotta be honest, I really thought Jin's motivations were poorly fleshed out, and his death is played up as a tragedy, and I'm like, okay. Also, just why does this sequence happen? The Afro Soul Reaper shows up and tries to stop Aizen? I just remember reading that and going, that was pointless. So, finally, Ichigo shows up and he pretty much kicks Aizen's ass. The only part I think I found very cool is when Aizen refuses to move and Ichigo just makes him move anyway. And I must admit, Aizen's villainous breakdown is immensely satisfying. The sheer fact that a human could surpass him is just unthinkable to him. So Ichigo turns into Super Saiyan 3, but a mummy? That is basically what this is. He decides to use his final attack, Moongetsu. This will take away Ichigo's powers and make him an ordinary human again. So the attack is made, Ichigo loses his powers, Aizen's still not done, but he gets sealed away because Ulquiorra nerfed him, and Ichigo expresses some pity for him, which really just falls flat in my opinion. So finally, at long last, Aizen is sentenced to 20,000 years in prison. Why not just kill him? Ichigo wakes up and he and Rukia bid a final goodbye. And with that, the Arrancar arc finally comes to a close. What can one possibly say about it? Well, for me, this whole stretch was really what caused people to turn off of Bleach. The conflict with Aizen, after 7 years of build-up, just not a satisfying conclusion for many. Aizen just proved to be a rather disappointing villain. He had the potential to be one of Shonen's best villains, but instead, he's often regarded as one of the worst. It's probably not a coincidence that during this time, Bleach's volume sales dropped by 1 million each year. Let's go into some basic problems that Kubo tends to have when writing Bleach. You may have noticed that with each arc, the cast of Bleach increases exponentially. For example, we start off with a main cast of 5, with Ichigo's family and classmates serving as supporting characters. Then you get to Soul Society and the cast size more than doubles. Then with this arc, the cast size tripled with the Espadas and all the other groups. From what I gather, Kubo's way of dealing with writer's block is to introduce a brand new character. Based on the sheer number of them, it seems he had writer's block very often. It's not just that Kubo introduces an awesome new character, he introduces a whole group of them. You had 13 captains who each had a lieutenant, for example. What's worse is Kubo's focus on the main cast is incredibly erratic, like I mentioned. He pushed Rukia and Chad to the side when it seemed he didn't know what to do with them, and instead of doing these big events with his main cast, he instead does them with his supporting cast. Here's the thing, I don't consider Bleach to be necessarily terrible, but it's really held down by atrocious pacing, like I said. This arc stretched from volume 22 to volume 48. The fake Karakura portion begins at chapter 317. The ending is chapter 423. In that span of 107 chapters, 34 are just the fight with Aizen. Say what you will about Naruto, but at least I thought the manga was paced pretty well. Until you get to the war arc, of course, but I already talked about that. You see, One Piece and Naruto, for all their ups and downs, maintained loyal followings, but Bleach? Oof, you really couldn't say that. You see, while I don't think this arc was what truly finished Bleach for a lot of people, it was the start of the end. Kubo just didn't deliver in the clutch for what was hyped up to be his big moment. When you don't deliver a good ending, people seem to fall off the series, as evidenced by what happened with Game of Thrones last year. But this wasn't quite the end of Bleach. We still got the full-body Asian arc to go, and this arc was for many the last nail in the coffin. Reportedly, this arc was during the 10th year anniversary of Bleach, and its publication was very hard on Kubo, and we're about to see why. Before we begin, I'll address the relatively recent news that Kishimoto's taken over Boruto. The truth of the matter is, I don't care. I really don't care. Now that that's done, let's move on. So where we last left Bleach, Aizen had been defeated for good and it seemed all was wrapped up. Ichigo had lost his Soul Reaper powers and thus returned to normal life. What was there left to do? Apparently a lot, as Kubo said he felt he still had another 10 years left in him. Oh boy. But for many, this arc was the last straw, as people jumped off Bleach in droves during this story. This was also, until next year, the very last arc to be animated. The anime stopped here as they were basically 2 weeks behind the manga, and rather than doing more filler, they just canceled the series due to Bleach's declining popularity. Let's get right into it. Here we begin the Fullbringer Arc of Bleach, or is it the Lost Asian Arc? It says here it's the Lost Asian Arc. It's been nearly 2 years since the Battle of Aizen, and Ichigo is now a senior in high school at the age of 17. So it seems we're settling into a back to normal feeling for Bleach. What I will say about the time skip is, these are some of the laziest redesigns I've ever seen. I know 15 to 17 years isn't much of a difference, but look at Naruto's progression. There's a clear distinction to how old he is in each design. Here, Kubo really did the bare minimum. At this point, Ichigo's gotta start thinking about what he wants to do after he's done with school, but instead he's much more concerned about seeing Rukia again. Come to think of it, why does Kubo keep having Rukia make these big dramatic returns? Why can't she just stick around? Ichigo claims he's happy to have a normal life, except honestly, for the most part, I don't remember Ichigo ever yearning for a simpler life. This little bit of characterization is odd. I guess I'm misremembering things, but it wasn't as pronounced as Peter Parker. He still can't help helping people in need because that's just who he is. But of course, things aren't going to stay normal for very long. So anyway, this new girl, Ikumi, basically adopts Ichigo in broad daylight. Are they going to call the cops on this? So we get introduced to more new characters. Of course, like I said, Kubo doesn't introduce a new character, he introduces a whole group of them. They have plans for Ichigo. Oh joy. The new group is Execution. You mean execution, right? Well, that's pretty apt considering this series is so poor at it. Basically, as it turns out, Chad hasn't been coming to school lately. So is Kubo finally going to make up for the blatant negligence of Chad, who is supposed to be one of the main characters at long last? Of course not. Anyway, Execution wants to get Ichigo to regain his Soul Reaper powers. Here Ichigo meets Chad. It turns out Chad is a Fullbringer. Apparently Ahalla's lost heart becomes a mask. I'm seriously getting Kingdom Hearts vibes for this. Maybe I should rethink my future Kingdom Hearts' Naruto video. Basically, they were born between a Soul Reaper and a human, like Ichigo, and they want to pass on their powers to humans so they can be normal. Alright then, Ichigo agrees to get his powers back. So Ichigo undergoes some training to unlock his Fullbringer power, which involves fighting a giant pig, which is just surreal. Then again, this is shonen. It turns out Rukia is obsessed with dolls. Reminds me of Serena from Pokemon. Chad finally gets to actually do something as he warns Ichigo that he needs his deputy badge to be able to fight back. But 15 minutes pass and the doll goes into berserk mode. Must say I really do like Girgo. I like his design. Like a British gentleman, but with an eye patch. His full bring ability is Time Tells No Lies. Okay then. Well, what he means is that Ichigo and the person stuck in the doll will die after 30 minutes pass. That's unfortunate. Chad tells Ichigo that in order to get what he needs to access his Fullbringer power is pride. Pride, a deadly sin. The message is good. Chad is telling Ichigo that he's essentially proud of who he is, and that Ichigo should be too. With these words, Ichigo is able to gain access to his Fullbringer power, which is like a cross, but it gives Ichigo some versatility. So Ichigo has passed the test, but as he heads out, he hears Rukia's voice. Now why is that? Orihime is attacked by Mo.
Ah yes, rusty and dull.
Not that Mo. Well, I will say I do like Orihime's demeanor here. She has her good moments, and this is much better than she was in the Arrancar arc. But the one who really attacked Ishida was this man, Tsukishima. But Ichigo and Chad sense that Orihime is under attack, and thus rush off to save her. Orihime isn't harmed, and she covers up what happened, mostly because she doesn't want to worry Ichigo. So now Ichigo decides to keep undergoing training, and meets Jackie Tristan. Ah, like Jackie Chan. There are some obvious hints that there's something sinister to these Fullbringers. I could have told you that. Ichigo activates his Fullbringer powers, and it looks exactly like his Soul Reaper form. But Ichigo figures out that these guys were behind the attack on Orihime, so he attacks. Gee, who could have seen that coming? Ichigo's clearly not used to this form, but Jinjo comes to his aid. Ichigo passes out but wakes up in another hideout where he is told that he has to do more training. Boy, this whole arc is training. Typically, training happens off-panel to speed up the pace, but then again, this is Kubo. He has no idea what pacing is. At this point, it feels like this arc is mostly building up to something. It better be good. Oh, now we're going video game with the training. I guess that's something. Come on, Kubo, just have something happen. So Orihime and Chad come to Ichigo's aid, and they say they knew he'd get his fighting spirit back. That's nice, I guess. I guess Kubo's trying to make up for spectacularly failing Orihime in the previous arc. So finally some things are happening. Hopefully any moment now. Jinjo is training Ichigo, lecturing him about how to dodge! But the purpose of the fight is clear, as it allows Ichigo to fully awaken his Fullbringer powers. Not sure I feel the look, but I guess it's okay. Looks kinda like a skeleton. I guess that's the point though. What I do like is that we're trying to get back to early Bleach's sense of humor. I do like his sword. Reminds me of Link. Somewhat. So Ichigo comes home to his beloved sisters, only to find Tsukishima waiting for him. Okay, you ever see that panel of Darkseid sitting on Mary Marvel's couch? Kinda like that. What's really troubling is Ichigo's family treats him as though he's always been their friend. In fact, all of his friends treat Tsukishima like he's always been part of their lives. Ichigo panics. Jinjo tells Ichigo that all of his friends were attacked by Tsukishima. This is really tense, and it really feels like we're finally getting that payoff we've been waiting for. Tsukishima can manipulate people's memories if he's cut them. That's really interesting. Like Naminé from Kingdom Hearts. Oh, I did again. Go check out my Kingdom Hearts videos so far. So Ichigo goes all out, but Orihime and Chad come to Tsukishima's aid. Even though they have been led to think that he is their friend, now, if Ichigo kills him, he will bear the risk of being shunned by his friends, and this breaks Ichigo's spirit. He can't bear to fight his friends. Kubo, you're doing it. You're pulling through. Jinjo sacrifices himself to spare Ichigo from being cut, but he takes it from the front so he's safe. But then, as Ishida reveals, it was actually Jinjo's doing all along. Oh man, this is so good. Ichigo is so broken. How's he gonna rise from this? This is so... Or Rukia can show up out of nowhere and give Ichigo back his Soul Reaper powers as a Deus Ex Machina. I don't know if I'm quite at the mental breakdown yet, but... Oh, we're getting there. Well, what I will say about Rukia's design... I liked her old look better. Rukia reminds Ichigo that Tsukishima can't erase his future, and then the rest of the captains come to Ichigo's aid. We're going back to this, are we? Yeah, this is supposed to be a hell yeah moment, but instead it just means that we're back to standard Bleach. Basically, all the captains owed Ichigo a debt, which is a nice sentiment. Ichigo changed Yamamoto. Funnily enough, I don't think I remember Ichigo and Yamamoto sharing one meaningful moment together. Maybe I'm misremembering. Turns out Jinjo was the first Deputy Soul Reaper, which I think does give Jinjo a nice parallel to Ichigo. Also, everyone who's here is somebody whose life was changed by Ichigo, except Hitsuguya. He's there because he's popular. Most of the fights with the Fullbringers are over before they even begin. Renji actually wins a fight. There's no good footage of Charlie Brown kicking the football, so I will instead play this. You'd have a very low opinion of Sasuke. Tsukishima is rather anticlimactically defeated by Bakuya. Ichigo has changed the Soul Society, they say. It's not as stubborn anymore. Except, how is it better? My biggest problem here is that we were telling how Ichigo changed the society, not showing how he did it. Ichigo rather anticlimactically defeats Jinjo. Yeah, that happened. So we have some wrap-up. Fullbringers are redeemed, for some reason. Tsukishima didn't know how to live without Jinjo, but it's okay now because he realizes he's not alone. So some things happen and the full body agent arc comes to an end, and the only thing I can say is, that's it. That was your big follow-up to the Deicide arc. This whole arc just felt like it was building up to something grand and epic. It was like Kubo was addressing the pacing issues that plagued the previous arc. We finally get to see Ichigo at his lowest point. It was so genuinely good. Probably the most I've enjoyed Bleach since the Soul Society arc. But then Rukia and the captains show up and it's all resolved incredibly quickly. While the idea to flesh out Jinjo as Ichigo's parallel, Kubo didn't do anything interesting with it. Ushida, Chad, and Orihime were once again useless. Apparently Kubo claimed that this arc was Chad's day in the limelight, except no, he barely did anything. I'm still questioning why he's billed as a main character. I mean, I get that Fullbringers are intended to be neutral characters, but they feel so inconsequential. Do they come back in the next arc, or are they forgotten about? From what I understood, Kubo said this year is particularly hard on him, which may have contributed to this arc not delivering. It has the opposite problem as the Arrancar arc. While that arc seriously wore out its welcome, this arc just ends before it really has a chance to get going. So once again, Bleach it had solid concepts, but the execution was just off. Well, I guess we're done for today. Shorter video than normal, but there's really not much to say about this arc. It just kind of happened. And for many, it was the final nail in Bleach's coffin. Bleach's time was up. It was now time for it to end. So join me next time for the finale of this Bleach retrospect with the 1,000-Year Blood War. I've heard many consider it worse than Naruto's War Arc, but also before I go, I'd like you to meet Hector, my new kitty. Thanks for climbing on me while I'm trying to edit videos, Hector. We're finally here, the long-awaited moment. So begins the end of Bleach, the 1,000-Year Blood War Arc. I've heard varying stories. It's no secret that Bleach's popularity was declining, so I imagine Kubo's editors told him that he had to end the series with the next arc, and so Kubo obliged. But how long this went on for, well, we'll get into that. All I'll say for now, and I will continue to say, if Kishimoto's the king of breaking his own rules, then Kubo's the king of wasting time. But we've got an arc to cover, so let's begin, shall we? We open with a typical day in Soul Society. Everyone's going about their daily lives when an attack happens. Ichigo arrives right away to rescue the two Soul Reapers, and we cut back to right before where Ichigo was hanging out with his friends. Alright then. Yamamoto is confronted by these guys, who are here to declare war. Ooh, ominous. Meanwhile, Ichigo is fighting a man named Yhwach. The Masked Man declares in 5 days that Soul Society will be destroyed by Vanderrick, or the Invisible Empire. Yhwach is driven back by Ichigo, and the Masked Men appear, and we meet our main villain for the final arc, Yhwach, who establishes his character by blowing off Looter's right arm. Wouldn't be Bleach if someone didn't lose a limb. In fact, Yhwach pulls, "You have outlived your usefulness" by killing both Yhwach and Looter's. Well, I guess this is a way to establish Yhwach's character. In fact, he's already claimed Hokumundo. Ichigo and the gang arrive there, Maya Yoshida, and find Hokumundo absolutely devastated, or at least I think it's supposed to be. Hard to tell when Kubo doesn't draw backgrounds. So the captain, Colgate OP, what a name that is determining which Arrancars can be recruited. He establishes himself as being pretty tough by incapacitating Loli and Manola. The army is made up of Quincy's. All those hints about Quincy's hating Soul Reapers are finally about to pay off. This does seem like it could set up some very interesting conflict between Ichigo and Uryu. Yhwach declares the invasion of the Soul Society to begin. The key difference between Soul Reapers and Quincy's is that a Soul Reaper cleanses the Hollow Souls and sends them to Soul Society, while Quincy will wipe them out entirely. Interesting dilemma. Basically, to prevent the collapse of the world order, so the world of the living wouldn't outweigh the Soul Society, 200 years ago they wiped out all the Quincy's save a few. Back to Ichigo, he's fighting Colgate, and just as he's about to do a huge move, he gets interrupted by Aizen, who tries to fight Colgate, who responds by turning into this grotesque form. Gross. He's about to pull off his major move, but Ichigo is able to stop him with his Bankai. Alright then. Oh, of course, the main reason Ichigo is fighting Colgate is so he can't show up to help defend the Soul Society. Classic keep your main character out of the picture sort of thing. In fact, that's explicitly Colgate's purpose as he mocks Ichigo while locking him in a cage. Ichigo can hear everyone calling out to him for help, and he's unable to do anything about it. Colgate attempts to stop Ichigo's friends, but he's rather quickly killed by Grimjaw. Go figure. Soul Society is absolutely trashed with Bakuya apparently dying. Yamamoto is really pissed, as evidenced by this incredibly huge panel. He finally uses his Bankai, but Yhwach stands his ground and reveals that he met Aizen! Dun dun dun! He tried to convince Aizen to join him, but Aizen turned him down. Oh great, Aizen's definitely coming back. That's just dandy. Yhwach cuts Yamamoto in half. You know, with Bleach, I can never tell if this will be fatal or not, but this time it is. Yamamoto is dead. Considering how terrible he was at his job, can't say I feel like mourning him. Ichigo arrives just in time to witness Byakuyo's final moments. Or at least they should have been. Ichigo confronts Yhwach, but Yhwach absolutely destroys him in his weakened state. Ichigo gets back up because he's Ichigo. Yhwach drops a major bombshell, namely that he knows Ichigo's mother. Yhwach's senses are out of order because of what Aizen was able to do to him. Even when he's subdued to a chair, he still manages to be broken. The wounded are tended to, and Ichigo's Bankai seems irreparably broken. But he is told that if he goes to the palace of the Soul King, he may be able to fix it. Hence why Ichigo is teleported to a hot spring of all places. That's a little weird. You'll heal them all up in good time. That was a nice ass shot there, Rukia. But all that is pointless as we finally get our first look at the Soul King. So getting to this place was much easier than Aizen would lead you to believe. Go figure. So now Ichigo and Renji are eating. It serves a purpose. It's fortifying them for their training. It's like Toriko eating its training. The trial of Nemya, the inventor of the Zanpakuo. More exposition about these Zanpakuo. I mean, this is all leading somewhere, right? So we get some more insight. Kenpachi's character progresses a little bit. Much time is dedicated to Kenpachi fighting Unoha. And for the record, I don't consider this to be that bad, honestly. It's a worry progress, and in the end where he pleads for her not to die while she passes blissfully is good, for what it's worth. Meanwhile, Ichigo meets his father, Isshin, who decides that now is finally time to tell Ichigo about how he met his mother. Ooh, mystery. Renji's doing his own thing, but in my opinion, I feel it should be Rukia who's with Ichigo during this section. Let's go back to Ichigo and Rukia's interactions. That's what made early Bleach so good. Give me that feeling again. Anyway, the flashback reveals that Ichigo's mother was a Quincy. I'm assuming Kubo will do this to try to mend the world between Soul Reapers and Quincy's, and Ichigo will be the one who causes the mend, but as it turns out, there is no morally gray side to this at all. The Quincy's are pure evil monsters because, as we established, the Hollows are souls that can feel love and pain, so there's no moral ambiguity here. But Kubo manages to answer some lingering questions such as why Aizen sent Rukia, and how this all fit into his master plan, and also why Ichigo has his hollow powers. I guess that's a little bit of an explanation, but now Isshin is going to explain why Masaki died that day, 9 years ago. Basically, Yhwach was the reason she lost her Quincy powers. The flashback is quite informative, and we get a lot of information about how Ichigo's parents met, and just what happened that night. It's well done. Meanwhile, Yhwach welcomes their newest member, Uryu Ishida. Ooh, now things are getting interesting. This has been teased for so long, a confrontation between Ichigo and Ishida. Now that can be really good and give the final showdown some much needed emotional gravitas. It turns out Ichigo's Zangatsu represents his Quincy powers, and it is Yhwach from 1,000 years ago. I don't even know. Should I be amazed, outraged, in between, or just confused? Or maybe all of that. Zangatsu explains that he wanted to keep Ichigo from becoming a Soul Reaper, but had a change of heart and decided to support his development. I guess that works. Yhwach reveals that Ishida will be his successor, a decision that the rest of the Sturm Ritter don't take too kindly to. Rukia and Renji are training together, and Chad and Orihime are talking about how peaceful it is, but it's always a calm before the storm. Yhwach declares to Ishida that this will be the last 9 days of the world. This is what many consider to be the end of the first act of Bleach's final arc, and it sets up some pretty promising things. Questions are answered, and it feels like the major battle is about to come. The only major misstep is that Bakia is alive, one that I suspect is because Kubo was told not to kill him by his editors. So we get more exposition, particularly how hollows are poisonous to Quincy's, and so their Bankai should become poisonous to Quincy's if they absorb their hollow power. Makes sense, I guess. Of course, Yhwach predicted this because of course he did. Ichigo now has this kind of clothing. A little tacky, but I get the point. Of course, he's late for the battle, so he has to hurry up. Can't have the hero be there from the beginning. Now this arc goes into standard fighting. Some minor things happen that I don't find worth noting. I guess we're getting the smaller battles out of the way first, but knowing Kubo, this is just the beginning of his pacing problems. So Rukia and Renji get to fight next. Renji does a fairly good job. It happens. Rukia is able to avoid falling to fear like her brother because her sword allows her to be technically dead so she can't feel fear or something. I don't even know how that works, so I'll simply say, yeah, sure, why not? But Rukia doesn't quite finish the job against Az. How do you pronounce that? But Byakuya shows up to save her. You just couldn't let her have this, could you, Kubo? You just had to fall back on having Big Brother show up to save Rukia. Again! Oh, he's actually not going to do that. I misspoke. Well played, Kubo. So as Az dies, he seems scared of what awaits him. Very real. And Rukia is, well, whatever this is. Kenpachi's fight is, well, it's alright. Nothing too notable. I'm just like, okay, Kubo, don't make me wait too long for the main event, please. You really don't need to drag this out. Kenpachi is on the brink of death, but just in the nick of time, Ichigo arrives. Well, good. Hopefully this means the arc will start picking up again. But as it turns out, because Ichigo was wearing oaken clothes, this will allow Yhwach to invade the Soul King's palace because it broke the barrier between the two, so yeah, Ichigo screwed up. It's here that Ichigo and Ishida finally confront one another. Alright, good timing, Kubo. I do like how Chad tells Ichigo that Ishida must have his own reasons for joining him, but it won't change anything. He's their friend and they're going to get him back. Of course, then we get Orihime's big boobs played for her sex appeal. Well, that's Japan for you. Yhwach, Ishida, and forgive me if I'm pronouncing this wrong, Hashwolf enter the Soul King's palace. So it's here at this point that for all the potential this arc showed, how promising it all started, this is where it all goes wrong. So instead of continuing with the main bad guys invading the Soul King's palace, we instead get a story where some Soul Reaper captains have to fight their zombified allies. Zombies. I am so sick to death of zombies. One of the most overused tropes in anything. I'm sure the next one will be what we want to see. Come on, Kubo. Don't pull this shit again. Not again. What the hell am I looking at? Let's never speak of this again. Alright, finally, back to Yhwach. He's fighting the Divine Soldiers. Surely this will be good. And now we cut back to Ichigo and his friends about to be launched into the Soul King's palace. Okay, and now we cut back to Yhwach against the Royal Guards. This should be good. More unimportant characters fight. Come on, Kubo, get with the program here. Stop dragging this out. Oh god, I still got 85 chapters left. How? How can you drag this out much longer than it needs to be? Some bizarre mood whiplashes. Is this supposed to be funny? I'm confused. I swear Byakuya looks exactly like Sasuke did in the last. Ugh. Yhwach just absolutely owns the Royal Guards, and why do I feel like nothing is happening? Panels are wasted with huge double-page spreads, focusing on characters that we know don't really matter. Where the hell is Ichigo? Oh, okay, there he is. I almost forgot that he was supposed to be the main character. He says this guy whose name I don't bother remembering from death by saying his name because reasons. Yeah, he can do that. Sure, whatever, why not? Just give me Ichigo versus Ishida, Kubo! So Ichigo and the gang arrive just as Yhwach impales the Soul King. I would have thought that impaling the Soul King would be a little harder than that, but I guess not. We are officially in the end stages of this arc. Gotta say, for an arc that went on for 4 years, this feels incredibly rushed. But Ichigo and the gang finally confront Yhwach. Alright, finally. We're getting to the good stuff. Just please don't cut away to something else. Also, one thing that annoys me, Rukia should be with Ichigo's gang, not with the other captains. Call that personal preference if you'd like, but that's just how I feel. Anyway, don't cut to something else, and that's exactly what you did. Arrgh! Come on, Kubo, stop dragging this out with bullshit and just get to the fight! Alright, that respite was brief. Ichigo goes to pull the sword out of the Soul King, but finds that he can't because the part of him that's Quincy refuses to because... well, just because. So Ichigo is part everything in this series, isn't he? Basically, with the Soul King dying, everything is going to disappear. I guess that makes sense. With no options left, Yukatake says that he will take Ryo's place, because his powers allow him to do that for some reason, and oh god, I don't care! Anyway, Shinju lets Aizen out, and Aizen just takes off the rest of the seals himself. Oh goody, it's going to be Yhwach's broken-ass bullshit versus Aizen's broken-ass bullshit. Who's gonna win? Where's Ishida? Yhwach doesn't take this well and shouts at Ichigo to destroy the Soul Society, but Ichigo says that he will protect everything. But Ishida finally shows up, and it seems we are at long last going to get our confrontation between Ichigo and Ishida, and it's just been cruelly teased. Meanwhile, Rukia and the other captains are not happy about enlisting Aizen's help. But Shinsu points out that they need his power. What's the old saying? The enemy of my enemy is my friend. But of course they don't trust Aizen, so they render him immobile. That didn't last very long, now did it? Meanwhile, Ichigo awakens and finds himself face to face with Grinjaw. Oh goody. Turns out he wants to kill Ichigo himself, but can't do so if Hokamundo is destroyed. Meanwhile, Yhwach completely absorbs the Soul King's powers and has taken over the Soul King's palace. You know what the problem is? This should be a huge deal, right? The bad guy is taking over the world, and yet you feel no tension, no sense of urgency, no worry for our heroes and how they'll make it out. You're not hooked. You're just complacent as you read, and wondering when this will finally end. Ichigo's been here, but he hasn't really done anything of note yet. And at this point, I got 5 volumes left to go in the series. So, next volume. Again, some unimportant characters are fighting. Like, come on, Kubo, stop dragging this out and get to the conflict that people want to see. Not to mention, it feels like we're into the same trap Kishimoto had with Madara. We have 3 villains here with incredibly overpowered bullshit. One's power, see all possible futures and I determine the outcome. One is any damage I take is transferred to my opponent and they take bonus damage on top of that and get stronger when they hit me instead of taking damage. Just how exactly do you expect anyone to beat that? So after all that, we still don't focus on the fighters that matter. What's happening here? Nothing, I tell you. Nothing! It's just these characters that we don't care about fighting while the ones we want to see are in the background. Come on, Kubo, you had such good build-up and you're squandering it. Where's Ichigo versus Ishida? Where's the whole morally gray aspect of the war? Or are we just going with full-blown bad guys because screw morality? Speaking of Ichigo, this is the final arc and he's the main character of the series, right? He's barely done anything in this arc. He's just been going from place to place looking for his next fight. Just come on, Kubo. Do something. Have someone do something.
Do something! Do something! Do something!
Okay, there's Ichigo. Is he gonna do something? No, we're going back to the unimportant characters. I gotta admit I'm skimming this stuff. Just give me the good stuff, Kubo. We've only got less than 40 chapters to go. So once again, it's not just Ichigo, but it feels like the main cast of Bleach is getting pushed aside for the supporting characters. This is the final arc, Kubo. You should be having your main characters do most of the heavy lifting. Instead, they're just doing nothing or getting rescued. Oh, finally, Ichigo and Iryu confront each other. I've had to wait through all that padding, and now we're finally at the good stuff. So at long last, Ichigo and Ishida begin to fight. Good God, that took way too long to get there. But there will be no conflict, because Ishida reveals that he never truly turned traitor, and that he's planning to take the whole compound with him. Well, what a cop-out. At that moment, we focus on Urahara versus Asukin. As it turns out, Urahara's Bankai has the ability that they exactly need to counter Asukin's poison because, well, ain't that convenient. Urahara is able to get Grimjaw to rip out Asukin's heart, but this somehow doesn't kill him right away, but both Urahara and Grimjaw are beginning to die, with Urahara stating that he's leaving everything to Ichigo and Rukia. Remember that's a very important note. Girard is too overpowered for this world, so he's defeated in a three-way battle between Hitsuga, Bakio, and Kenpachi until he's revived in a monstrous form for some reason. Now Ichigo finally confronts Yhwach. Yeah, we have a little bit over 10 chapters to go and we haven't started fighting the final boss yet. Yhwach claims to be Ichigo's true parent. You know, I felt Aizen was the one who manipulated Ichigo's entire life, so if Yhwach was manipulating Ichigo and Aizen was manipulating Ichigo's life, then who was pulling... oh god, I don't care. Ichigo and Orihime have managed to get the Yhwach without any kind of resistance. At all. Come to think of it, has Chad done anything at all? It really feels like Kubo regrets ever making Chad a main character. People say Sakura's useless. I think Chad's way more useless than her. So Ichigo and Yhwach are finally beginning to fight. Byakuya sends Rukia and Renji to aid Ichigo, and Isshin and Ryuken arrive on the scene. So Ichigo and Iryu's fathers are here to save the day. This would be great if, we actually saw what they were doing on panel instead of it being off screen! Could have made the parallel of a Soul Reaper and a Quincy coming together be more meaningful, but no, you just had to do it off screen. So the true terror of the Almighty is not to see the future. Oh god, I don't like where this is heading. So Ichigo charges at Yhwach and becomes... What the hell is this? This is Ichigo with all of his powers combined! But he looks so...
Stupid.
Not quite the word I was looking for, but that'll do. Yhwach gives the typical villain speech about despair, but Ichigo's heard enough of that and activates his Bankai. But Yhwach is able to sustain it and reveals the Almighty is about the power to alter the future. Excuse me for a moment. Continuing on. Meanwhile, Iryu is not doing so well against Haschwalth. Yeah, he can transfer damage he takes to his opponent. Where's the challenge in that? Yhwach drains Ichigo of his Hollow and Quincy powers, so all seems lost. Rukia and Renji arrive to help Ichigo. In fact, Iryu is only saved by the fact that Yhwach decides to take Haschwalth's power. Why? I will admit I do like the moment where Iryu says that he considers Ichigo a friend. They've come a long way. All seems lost when the Fullbringers arrive and repair Ichigo's sword. Where the hell have you guys been? Yhwach goes to Soul Society and finds Aizen waiting for him. Ryuken and Isshin give Iryu a silver arrow. Is this the same silver arrow that Link used to kill Ganon? Before Aizen and Yhwach can fight, Ichigo and Renji follow Yhwach through. Where the hell is Rukia? I thought Rukia was teased to have a big role in this fight, so it's Ichigo, Renji, and Aizen versus Yhwach. Should be Rukia instead of Renji. Why is it not Rukia? Anyway, Yhwach blows a hole straight through Ichigo's chest. Should be used to this by now. Or not, it was Aizen posing as Ichigo. But it doesn't work. All is lost when Iru shoots Yhwach with the Deus Ex Machina silver arrow. Ichigo cuts Yhwach in half and... that's it. That's the end of the fight. But...
Where's the kaboom? There was supposed to be an earth-shattering kaboom!
Where's the wrap-up? Where's the characters celebrating? I mean, Naruto gave a very rushed wrap-up, but it was better than this. Not that great, mind you, but at least it was something. Oh, 10 years later. Oh god, the epilogue again. Every time authors do a many years later epilogue, it never goes well. It turns out it's Rukia's ceremony to be promoted as captain. Oh good, but you still did her dirty, Kubo. Anyway, it's time once again to talk about shipping, so take it away, Jonah!
The internet's rife with footage of Spider-Man chasing the Black Cat across the rooftops. And apparently, there are hordes of young people cheering them on. They're called shippers. No, that has nothing to do with boats. It's short for relationship. As in, they really want Spider-Man and the Black Cat to be together romantically. Or they really don't. And they have quite intense arguments about it. Flame wars, I believe is the term. You know, in my day, we didn't have time for flame wars about shipping. You know why? Because we had jobs. So here's J. Jonah Jameson's public service announcement to our youth. You're into shipping? Join the Navy!
Yep, I'll never get tired of using that. Ichigo and Rukia are all together for a reunion. Chad is a boxer now. That's fitting for him, I suppose. Did he do anything at all in this final arc? Why was he billed as a main character? Iru is now a doctor. Okay, sure. Ichigo and Orihime are married and have a son. Well, let's start off by saying when it comes to this pairing, I'm neutral. I suppose it has the same problems as Naruto and Hinata, where there's enough to say that she liked him, there's nothing to suggest that he felt the same way. And this time there's no movie to explain how he fell in love with her. Though considering how that turned out, maybe that's a good thing. What I will give Ichigo and Orihime over Naruto and Hinata is that during the final battle, Orihime was the one by Ichigo's side first, and the manga at least directly acknowledges it on panel. Rukia and Renji also have a daughter. That's random. I mean, to be honest with you, I never really saw them as romantic. I always saw them as more of a comrade thing. Don't get me wrong, this is way better than Sasuke and Sakura because Renji at least respected Rukia and never tried to murder her. And Rukia never acted like a dog around Renji. And at the very least, Kubo gave Ichigo and Rukia shippers a reminder that they are still good friends and their relationship hasn't changed. And also, to be perfectly honest with you, I never saw Ichigo and Rukia's relationship as necessarily romantic. If it went that way, sure, that'd be fine, but they didn't necessarily have to be lovers either. Now we have Aizen summing up the themes of the series. I understand it, yes, to live in fear of death is without hope, but why in the world are you having Aizen do it of all people? In fact, why is he helping them at all? Don't tell me it was explained in one of those novels, I don't care if it was. Why was this all so rushed? Well, that's the unfortunate reality. Kubo was in very declining health, which is why the final battle in the manga was so incredibly rushed. The life of a mangaka is taxing and demanding. You work 6 days a week for maybe over 12 hours a day and get maybe 3 hours of sleep. It's not the kind of life one should lead. Or I've heard he was told to wrap it up in 2 weeks due to Bleach's declining popularity. Maybe it was both, I don't know. For answers to this, I went to Kubo himself. Let's see what he has to say.
Get out of my office!
So, now, let's just go into exactly what went wrong with this arc. First up is pacing. Pacing is a serious issue once again. This arc lasted for 206 chapters, and despite a very strong beginning, the arc meanders after a while. It starts with a great setup with interesting lore about the Soul Reapers and the Quincy setting up what really promised to be a really dramatic and interesting climax. But all that is thrown away. Kubo instead focused on the Soul Reaper captains again at the expense of the other characters. Let's go into some of them, shall we? Ichigo is supposed to be our main protagonist, right? Well, in this arc, he doesn't really get a whole lot to do. He shows up, you think of what would be the major turning point of the arc, then he just kind of races to wherever Yhwach is while the story proceeds to not focus on him. You see, in the Arrancar arc, there was an attempt to give Ichigo a character arc. It wasn't well executed, but he tried. In this arc, stuff just kind of happens around him, and he feels more like a reactionary protagonist than anything else. The fact that Yhwach was essentially the person responsible for his mother's death was a great idea, and I thought this would give Ichigo and Yhwach a real enmity going forward, but instead it barely comes up as per typical of Kubo. For else Naruto's final arc focuses way too heavily on Naruto and Sasuke, Bleach's final arc focuses way too little on Ichigo. It pretty much gets to the point where you wonder, is Ichigo even still the main character? The other character he woefully ignored has got to be Iryu. Each arc is focused on Ichigo and another member of the main cast. Soul Society was Rukia, Arrancar was Orihime, Full Body Agent was supposed to be Chad, but that went nowhere. So this arc was supposed to be for Iryu, and he barely shows up. Seriously, characters who don't matter to the narrative have far more prominence than the member of your cast who's a freaking Quincy! You had Ichigo and Iryu's fathers teaming up to save their sons. This could have been a great way to show peace between Soul Reapers and Quincy's. Instead, it was mostly all screen while they pick up the Deus Ex Machina arrow. Let's talk about Rukia for a moment. Remember when she was the second main character after Ichigo? Good times! Better than these. I'm of the belief that Bakio should have died at the beginning of this arc, and it's pretty clear to me that that was the intention. But I'm assuming that the editors insisted that Bakio survived due to his popularity, even though he doesn't do anything too noteworthy afterwards. Rukia gets her shining moment in her fight with Oz, but after that she doesn't do anything. Instead of Renji with Ichigo, it should have been Ichigo and Rukia fighting Yhwach together, with maybe Aizen helping out. Why does Rukia not go with them? While I admit I didn't see Ichigo and Rukia as romantic, the heart and soul of early Bleach was their interaction, and we really got significantly less of it as the series went on. Really cost Bleach a lot of its soul. One thing I hope the anime changes, have Rukia go with Ichigo to the final battle and expand it a little bit. Why did this arc need to be over 200 chapters anyway? You could have easily shortened it to half the time and kept the story and pacing down at a much faster rate. There was no tension in anything. Moments like the Soul King dying should have been huge oh my god moments, but instead we cared nothing when it happened. There were tons of unanswered questions, the character resolutions aren't very satisfying, and overall, what was the point of any of it? The only thing I can say is, what a waste. So overall, that's Bleach. Starts off promising, but slowly meanders over time. Like I said, Kishimoto's problem was adding too much shit into the story. Kubo's problem was not focusing on what was really important. The huge cast of characters certainly didn't help. I know introducing a new character is how he dealt with writer's block, but it always felt like Kubo mistook quantity for quality. After this, it seemed Bleach was finished, but there has been some renewed interest. The anime is supposedly coming back sometime this year, even though we haven't heard anything about it since it was announced. Although I wouldn't be surprised if the pandemic pushed things back a bit. Kubo has released some spin-offs of Bleach, which I've heard were well received. Maybe I'll take a look at them someday, but not today. So maybe there's life for Bleach in spite of everything. Time will tell. So, my journey through Bleach? I can definitely see why this was regarded as the worst of the big three. Had a lot of promise, but just didn't live up to it. Well, now I'm finished with Bleach, which manga will I tackle next? I think a short series is in order. One that I can do in one video. Next will be a look at Death Note, then I will start Yu-Gi-Oh! But I got some other projects to finish first, so look forward to that. Thanks for watching. If you like this video, please hit that bell, like, and subscribe button. If you want updates, follow me on Twitter or join my Discord, which are provided in the description below. See you next time.